Rock it like he's so. Rock it like he's so. Rock it like he's so.
Brains. Morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Let's get this up here. Notice there's some progress. I was, my brain was completely thrown last night because things were happening, and because things were happening, I was like, oh, okay, I need to get out of my head. The best way to get out of my head is to do some stitching, cross stitch. So yeah, that's what I was doing last night. So we've got a bit of off-stream progress here, which is, I don't know if that's something that's awesome, or you're like, oh, we missed out. But yeah, off-stream progress. So there it is. Right, where were we? We were thinking about doing the tree lines thing with the thing, and just reminding myself if the little flowery things are half stitch or not, because I think they might be. They are half stitch. Okay. This one I actually think I am going to do as a half stitch, which means I've got to be really careful how I do it. This is the blue-green, and this is the sort of flower symbol that we're looking at. I'm pretty sure it's only done along the tree line. And because it's only done along the tree line, and because unlike the other half stitches, which I didn't actually do as half stitches, I just did as, wait, is that the same symbol? That is a flower, 5 petals. No, it's a different symbol. That is like a dark, that is a solid, that is black solid flower on a thingy. Okay, that's fine. That is 100% fine. We'll get it. So I was thinking it was we got these wonderful colors here, and I'm thinking the tree line shadow, oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. That solid green flower should actually have more color over here. Oh, before we do the half stitch, we should totally do that, because that's already a color we have wound. And if it's a color we already have wound, we can find it quickly. Really, it looks like one of our darkest greens that we still have a fair bit of. Is that it? That looks to be it. Okay. Brilliant. If that is it, then we need to just find here. Tell you what, we're going to be bold. we're going to be so bold, and we're going to go in without, let's pop that in there. We're going to go in without, what's the word? We're going to go in without marks, because we're going to be bold and brave. Dive right in. It's not a ton to do, so I think that length of stitching should be okay. I'm excited because this is the first time in a while that I've spotted a colour I've missed or some squares I've missed. I totally understand why I made the mistake, because it's this colour, but it's all the way over there. It's all the way over there. Shut up. Yeah, at the moment my I don't need to think at all thing, and I want to just put on something on the telly while I stitch, is Angel. Don't know if any of you are Buffy or Angel fans from back in the day. I've shown my wife a bunch of Buffy before. She's catching a few episodes here and there when I watch it. But it was really funny. She didn't really resonate with Buffy. Buffy hasn't aged. Neither has Angel aged as well as I would like. For the time, the show was fantastic. But there's just some Whedonisms that are best left in the past. What can I say? It's very obvious. Yeah. Oh god, there's some really creepy shit. The main creepy shit is sexualization of girls. It's like, because I mean, hell, the whole like original premise of Buffy the movie was what if a cheerleader was a kick-ass warrior monk killing vampire person. It wasn't like, it was basically like, it was farcical. It was meant to be farcical because, oh my god, how could a woman ever be that kind of thing? And it was almost by accident that it ended up becoming an iconic like powerhouse show and female empowerment and stuff. But it's female empowerment in the whole like Lara Croft era. It's the whole like the Lara Croft I've got big boobs but I shoot stuff empowerment era was just such a weird time. Such a weird time. But yeah, I had to show her because I always told her about the musical episode. Like, oh my god, the musical episode is one of these great episodes of television that's just fantastic for all these crazy reasons. And it is, if you're unaware. Unfortunately, the musical episode is very late in the show's run and is filled with plot spoilers. One of the powerful things about a musical is it allows you to advance the plot in all kinds of awesome ways, and character development in all kinds of awesome ways, because musicals, there's that old stage adage, if you can't say it, sing it, and if words aren't enough, dance or something. I forget the exact thing, but it's basically about emotional intensity and how song is a more powerful delivery mechanism than just words, and how song and dance is even more powerful. Why am I doing that? Because I'm an idiot. No, yes, I am an idiot. I'm like, why am I being an idiot? Because I'm an idiot. No, you're not. No, yes, I am. This may all just pull. No. Oh dear. Oh dear. Can I save it? Can I save it? Or do I just want to have to... Oh dear. First stitch of the day and I'm all over the place. Well, to be honest, if it's going to happen on any stitch, it's going to happen on the first stitch of the day. Especially when I'm jumping in, no markers, like a complete renegade. Sorry, I find the idea of renegade stitching just hilarious because it's such a harmless activity. It's like it's like being the Sith Lord of baking. It just doesn't really add up, does it? There we go. Narrow. There we go. Fan bloody tastic, I tell you. Fan bloody tastic. So anyway, talking about singing and emotional outbursts and everything. So I showed, I've always talked to her about the musical episode, but I've never told her the plot and everything. Being like, I'd love to show it to you, but it has been quite a few years since I tried to get her to watch the show, and she's just not into it. So I was like, well, you know what? Let me just show you the musical episode, because you know you can appreciate that as a standalone thing, and you don't need to watch all these crazy hours of television. And it's it's an amusing piece of television. It's good. So I showed her the musical episode, and she got a bit of a chuckle out of that. I emphasize a bit of a chuckle because it's a really good episode of television, and it was really interesting for the time. It, again, hasn't aged great, and a lot of the reason it has such a punch is because it is the emotional climax of a lot of storylines. But just like there's a thing in there where the gay couple, one character gaslights another using magic, and you're just like, oh, this is so shit on so many levels, and you're just like, it's pain. There's no other word for it. It's pain. Yeah. But hey, it's a banger soundtrack. Like, the whole cast just really does great on it. The thing I am constantly fascinated about with television is the difficulty of producing a show and managing a budget, and just the practicalities of television just fascinate me endlessly. Because, and I don't mean like, so like there's Disney television, right, where they just spend stupid money, and it's like that doesn't actually interest me. Like I don't actually care as much about the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, even though The Mandalorian was groundbreaking and how they used the volume and all that jazz, because they had so much money that the creative problem solving from the showrunners was minimal. It was a show without much compromise. Put it that way. It was a show without much compromise. But then you look at something, and I'm going to blank now on the show's name. An Australian show. I think it was made for television, but it's on Netflix. It feels very and this show has the lowest of low budgets. It's about a girl who gets fairy and elf magic, and she gets exposed to this world and stuff. But everything from the casting and location choices to how the magic itself works to script development is all carefully arranged to keep the budget under control, because it's a special effects heavy show. but it's a special effects heavy show with absolutely no budget. So it's fascinating to see how they make that work. It just has my utmost respect when a show can do that. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no. Morning. Yeah, it has my utmost respect when a show can do that, and the speciality of going, oh, okay, we're going to do this thing, but we're going to do this thing in this crazy weird way. It's like how if you ever watched old British science fiction, BBC style science fiction, and they're not afraid to go higher concept, they're not afraid to take on big ideas, but they do it with no budget whatsoever. And it's all about like, how do we make our complete and utter lack of budget work for us? And I just adore that. I adore that. It's the same thing I adore about people who try and make drama content or whatever on YouTube and web series and things like that, because I'm like, you guys do not have the money. The difference there is they don't have the money, but they also don't have the, like when a YouTuber does it, they don't have the experience or the industry apparatus to use, because like, so the classic example, and to be honest, YouTube tried to solve this for creators and stuff, but it doesn't really work because they haven't got the other big ticket items hanging around that they can mooch off. But the classic one is the backlot, right? So you would have some of these movies, and usually movies, who would like need a set of London, or they would need some crazy props or whatever. And then after the movie was done, those props would go, and those scenes would go to the backlot. And then creative television shows, usually, sometimes movies, but usually television shows, had to go, well, how can we film with what's on the backlot? Like, how can we save this thing? And it's fantastic because you don't see it as much now because of CG and stuff. You do occasionally see it. So back in the day, I don't remember what his first appearance was, but there was a specific sci-fi robot that had like these donutty noodle arms and this domed glass head and stuff. And he appeared in, I want to say, Forbidden Planet first. But then he appeared in tons of other science fiction, purely because he was a robot. He was easy to use. He was easy to cast. It kind of just all worked out. Okay, be right back. Jappe. Yes, what is a robot? Oh yes, robot. Yeah, Robbie the robot or whatever. Had an illustrious science fiction career because it was just an easy prop. It was an easy costume to use, and yeah, that was a interesting manifestation of practicality. Now, there is a real world equivalent. Real world equivalent? Yes, the past is fake. The past is dreamed up entirely by Hollywood and doesn't really exist. The world is only 100 years old. Fucking. There is a present day equivalent with VFX, and that is sometimes you will see certain composite elements repeated, or you will see a certain graphics technique in a package like Houdini on default settings. Like you'll see defaults repeated, but that's a lot less common because the reality is a skilled crew uses Robbie the robot because it's a smart decision and they do a few minor alterations, but ultimately they're limited by physics. Whereas using the same composite element poorly and not like combining it with other things or using an effect on default settings is, I don't want to say sheer laziness, but it's close. It's close. So yeah, we're in a different world now when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like things like the Wilhelm scream have become more parody than practicality. Yeah, because we just got so many sound banks. It's not the days now when you purchased your sound banks, you would buy these like reels of tape and whatnot, or in more recent years, you would buy CD sets of sounds. And it wasn't like these super expensive Foley collections that a studio may actually own, and you as the audio engineer get to use this particular sound bank. Now it's like sounds are cheap. So yeah, the affectations of the Wilhelm scream are just, the economics aren't there like they used to be, which is interesting. It is interesting that that's a development that's happened, and yet it's now become that people use the Wilhelm scream to evoke emotion. It's become a cultural touchstone, which is weird. super weird. But yeah, I just love the practicality of these shows and backlots and repurposing. And seeing a production, like a professional production, do it is so much more satisfying than watching an amateur do it. But for the same reason, it's more satisfying watching a professional musician than it is watching an amateur musician. It's a skill, it's a craft, but it's a skill and craft that is maybe not seen as one. Maybe it is seen more as a, oh my god, the producer did the what, and penny pinching and da-da-da. It's like, no. They've been smart. And yeah, I think, to be honest, I don't think many people outside of the creative industry, I don't even think most people in the creative industry appreciate it as much as they should. However, if you've had any exposure to leadership on a creative project and finances on a creative project, you really start to appreciate the ability, the talent to be able to stretch funds like that. It's like I could talk about how that's done in video games, because it is done in video games a ton. But to me, that's not as interesting as how it's done on television and movie shows, because the way it's done on video games is frankly amateurish compared to how it's done on TV. I think a lot of that is down to the fact that video games never had a physical era, in the sense of making a TV show or a movie came from the histories of making plays, and even the history of making plays, was that whole thing of what does the costume department have? What sets are pre-existing? So it came from a fine tradition of that. And the only people really practicing that now are the scummy clone games and gambling games and things like that, which is unfortunate. Again, they have to be really creative and it's really interesting, but they're not trying to. It hasn't got the frenetic energy of a group of creatives desperately trying to bring their dream, their passion into existence, against the odds, using whatever duct tape and sticky wire is available to them. It just doesn't have that. Purity of soul. That purity of soul, I think, is a good way of expressing it. It's the difference between the hero being scrappy and resourceful versus the villain going to his minions and going, "Oh, I have found a way for us to save on our torture devices. If we torture people in 1-hour shifts, we'll have time for the coals to cool off. And then you can rotate between the dungeon and reduce energy use." Sorry, I've now got this image in my head of this save the planet super villain who's torturing people and committing nefarious deeds, but is considerate of their carbon footprint and their energy bill at the end of the month. It's I may be a villain, but I'm not that evil. I care for the planet. Oh my word. Oh my word. My brain just sometimes throws stuff up like that, and I'm kind of latching onto it. I'm trying not to latch onto it. I'm trying desperately just for my head to. See, this is why we mark shit, because you, Claire, just put a stitch in the wrong place. Let's see if we can unpick it. I'm going to unpick the entire floss, so it's not a huge deal. This is why we normally mark, because I get my brain all giddy thinking about ecologically responsible villains, and I don't keep track of where I was. Right. Okay. I think, yeah. Oh, actually, no, I know how to do this. So I don't screw it up, but also so I get a neat backstitch, because my backstitch at the moment is rather appalling, shall we say, darling. Just a travesty. Don't mind me, I'm losing my eyesight as I stare endlessly into the stitch. There we go. Just this bit of backstitch is getting a little bit messy, and I really want to neaten it up if I can. Just want to get that lovely feeling of, it's a neat backstitch. It's a satisfying feeling when I get it, so I like to be able to get it. Chase that high. It's like that skating high when I get a slide just right. But yes, my ecologically friendly villain, the point I was making was that when we see the hero be scrappy and resourceful and not give up, it's satisfying, because we're like, yes, hope, cheer on, da da da. And when we see the villain use the exact same stratagem, it's infuriating, and why won't he just die, and this villain is so OP, and da 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 da. Understandable. It's completely understandable. We do it in real life, you know, if you're watching a sport and you see your team do something a little bit cheeky but not technically illegal, you're like, yeah, good on them, they're being creative and blah blah blah. You see the other team do it and it's like, oh, that should be illegal, and da 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 da. You know, that wonderfully coloured vision of events that we all have. We drive our particular worldview through. It's amusing to see how we do that. But yeah, I just don't find it appealing when gambling companies and clone factories and, as I say, things motivated purely by money make these money-saving things, because then it's money in service of money, and it just becomes, it's like masturbation, really. It's just not it's not a fulfilling activity. Whereas when the same bookkeeping, you know, the same dodging of capitalism, really, and the limitations of capitalism, to creative thing. Oh, it's a joyous thing to watch, because the whole time you're just like, go, you can do it, and you just want them to succeed, you know. It's it hits differently. It's a different emotional beat. Okay, we need, what are we looking for? Just 2 stitch after this. Okay. That was a smaller patch than I expected. That was a much smaller patch than I expected. I'm glad I spotted it. I'm very glad I spotted it. But yeah, that was much smaller than I expected. Oh, there we go. There we go. Is there any of this I need to unpick? No, not really. I haven't got a great thing to tie it down with. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna leave quite a long cut at the end, because I will work it into some other stitching when I do some stitching around there. Speaking of which, I should look at these stars as a colour. It's an interesting colour, and it would finish off the C connection. I bet you, looking at it now, I bet you that the star section, there it is. Do you know what? I think I even had some of this particular colour stitched up. Probably wouldn't have had enough, but maybe I would have had enough, because it's quite a fair bit of stitch there. Oh well. Sod it. Oh well. It happens. We need to check the pattern, and how much. Okay, the stars used a bunch at the base of Nessie, which is interesting. I like that. And used a bunch at the base of the forest, but not a ton. Like, we don't need an absolute ton. It's basically water reflection. Because it's water reflection, my gut says it's gonna be, it is a half stitchy kind of color. Do you know, I know these just have numbers on, but it would just be so satisfying if they had, I think that's the color I'm going to go for. Nope. There we go. Needle recovered. I just double check this. Do I have something a smidge more green? Just a smidge more towards green. See, that's quite dark. But I actually quite like that. I think I'm going to go for that. And we're going to do this as an actual half stitch, not as any of our halfway options. Right. So first things first, we are going to... Oh no, I just realized I had this whole extra... Let me just wind that onto my messy... I'm sure someone is looking at this and going, oh my god, what is she doing? It's not what that's for, and that's such a mess. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. That's what I'm using it for. It's fine. It's totally fine. Right, we're gonna have to wind that, which means we need an empty thingamajiggy. You know, at some point, I'm fighting my compulsion to organize it, but at some point I'm like, I'm just gonna organize all of my floss. Yeah, fighting the urge hard, but hey, it happens. It happens. Okay, let's wind that there. Keep that. If you're curious, the reason why I do this... Oh dear, we lost the face cam due to overheating. Well, let's just kill that for now then. If you're curious, the reason why I do that, where I stick it there and I wind around, it's so that when this runs out, if I need to replace the exact thing, I know what the exact color that was on here was. So it's a little helpful bit to future Claire, because that bitch is never grateful. Yeah, something me and my wife joke about, and I've seen in some self-help books and some other things, like, think about being kind to your future self, because if you don't, you know, if you're not prepared to do this for you, maybe you're prepared to do this for future you, if you think of them as a different person. Because some people have that psychology, and my wife is definitely one of them, and I'm prone to it as well, where I suck at doing things for myself, but I'm much better at doing them for other people. So sometimes we think about making our future selves happy. And then you can express gratitude to your past self. Like, oh, thank you so much for making breakfast last night before I went to bed. Or, you know, thank you for winding that that number below the thread. So when I ran out, it's there. Then you thank your past self. And then you start to be, you know, grateful for actions you did in the past. It's a nice little mental trick to get you to do more stuff that's good for you, long term. And performing small acts of kindness for yourself is something more people should do. Literally get yourself a gift. I think we all do that when we go Amazon shopping or whatever, but don't how do I say this? Treat it as a gift. Don't go like, oh, that thing I ordered. It's like, oh, thank you. That thing's there. But you can literally just take stuff you already own and wrap it. And I know that sounds really weird and like the kooky kind of thing that a character in some romantic comedy would do or whatever, but you can say clean a whole bunch of stuff that needs cleaning, like tools or whatever, and then sort of present them out. Like I've had these pegboards that I've needed to get up for ages, and I got one of them up, and I neatly put in all the peg hooks, and I arranged some of our tools and stuff that just need using. And when I was finished, I was like, oh, all done, and it felt so good. Okay, now I have to be really careful how much I mark this, because I am actually legitimately I don't like doing half stitch on this, because generally it's such a full piece and I don't want the things showing through. But I think this is a case where I do want to actually do it. So here's a fucked up thing. Okay. The fucked up thing that I was going to refer to was that slightly different area that looks like it should have the same color has a different color thread. And part of me is convinced sometimes the patterns just use more colors than they're necessary in places, because, makes them more appealing to stitch or some shit. Then I realized it's like, no, we need color variation at the bottom of Nessie, which is why there's two reflection colors for a very similar thing. 1, 2, 3. Wait. No. Shit. Okay, I'm gonna stitch that now before I mark up the rest of it, because I just want this little patch done so I don't forget about it, because I know what my brain's like. My brain be dumb sometimes. Okay, we shouldn't need as much because we're doing a half stitch. Do we actually want to do the half stitch, or do we want to do... No, I'm going to stick to my decision earlier. I'm not going to do a half stitch. I am going to just do single thread rather than doubling up. And that'll get the lightness of color. What I was thinking about, and then I'm like, no, the reason you're doing this is because you just want to go onto your embroidery piece. Because I know I've said this on stream before, but after this cross stitch piece, I want to get into a bunch of embroidery stuff, because I'm just more interested in the more varied techniques of embroidery, satin stitches, and French knots and all the little more technical bits of well, I mean, cross stitches are kind of embroidery, you see, so, but it just feels like cross stitches, a very narrow, defined version of it, which is fine. So it's like pixel art being a narrowly defined version of thing. But I'm like, I want to try the more, I don't even think complex is the right word. The more varied styles of embroidery. But I want to keep this as a cross-stitch piece. And I know a half-stitch is part of the cross-stitch language, but the way that this piece has come together, I've been modifying the language of the pattern. You know, I've been playing up with some of the colors. I went generally in the entire piece with a thicker stitch than was recommended. And I've been, so I just feel like varying the weight of the stitch is a more appropriate thing for me to do here. Because, you know, this stitch is not really using the Ada underneath it in much of a creative fashion. It's more a filler piece. And I know it's going to puff out when I finish it. That's fine. I'm expecting that. And then it's going to be a super full piece. And that's kind of like where my head is at for that. Go, and now when we come here, I want to just make sure that we're pinching that thread into the stitch. It'll just secure it a bit more, and it'll just make the back stitch a smidge neater. And it gives that really satisfying, texture of knotted line is not quite the correct word. It gives that satisfying bumpy line, dashed line feel. Dashed line is, I think, the correct euphemism for what I'm going for. And here, though, I'm going to go for the work it back. See, that's very loose, but now if I do this, wrap it on that finger there, pinch that in. Come on. There we go. Pinched. And with each of these, I just reinforce that pinch, and it'll get ever so much neater. I love doing this stuff. It's the small things. You know, I think one of the best pieces of advice I read, and I read it not that long ago, this was advice I only came into in the last 5 years, which, considering how long I've been doing creative stuff, it's kind of shocking. I think I might have heard this advice before, but it literally only sunk in recently, because I say about 5 years ago. And it was simply, the advice was simply, enjoy the process. Don't enjoy the completion, because you do the thing a lot more than you finish the thing, you know? And finding those little moments of joy in the process, it's how you get really good at things, and it's also just how you get you get more enjoyment and satisfaction from tasks, because you're like, debugging code fun. You know? Getting satisfaction from the bug hunt. Because if the only thing that's driving you is that endorphin rush of, I have crushed the bug, I am the almighty coder, then, you know, you're going to get frustrated because sometimes you're going to spend a very long time on the bug hunt. And sometimes you're not going to catch the bug. Sometimes it's just not going to be worth the effort. You have to write it off and move on in your life. And if your pleasure is the completion, is the crushing, then yeah, doing the thing more than the finishing thing describes most of my programming projects. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. And morning to you, sir. Good to see you. Yeah. So enjoying taking little moments of pleasure from this, where I'm like, I'm neatening up this bit of backstitch or whatever. Just makes it more fun. And I think, don't get me wrong, there's great power in finishing projects, but I think too often people guilt trip people into like going, why have you not finished things? And it's like, because I just kind of like doing them. It's like, you know, there's some video games or some books or some television series where you really enjoy watching the first season, or you really enjoy playing the early game. Then you're not really much for the mid or late game, and so you constantly start new saves. Or it's like, and I've gotten much better at this because, you know, I've been doing it for so long. But for the longest time, I would always get frustrated with high-level D&D. And I'm like, I just want second-level characters, fifth-level characters running around the world doing shit. It's just more fun. And now I know how to run higher-level games better, and that was like part of my development as a dungeon master. Never really liked that phrase, dungeon master, to describe the person running a D&D game. I always preferred the White Wolf phrase of storyteller. It's a bit pretentious because really it's a collaborative story. There was one other term. Obviously there's game master and stuff, but it's the master part that I'm not a huge fan of in that. Not only because it's gendered, but also just because there's the whole submissive dominance dynamic in that, which is, you know, to be honest, it's part of the culture. It's become less part of the culture, which is good because it's healthy. And I'm fully guilty of it. I used to go to conventions, and one of the things I do to help a convention game run smoothly is I get everyone to write their character names and their first name on a piece of paper, or just their character names, like radially, so it's pointing to where they're sitting, kind of thing. And then I would boldly, at the start before they put their names on, or at the end, write God on the piece of paper, just to, you know, really assert that I was in charge of this table and I was running this table. I mean, it's a bit different with convention games because you've got to really take charge of the table and get it through, and you've got to override a whole bunch of social dynamics, and especially if you're a female GM, there's a whole bunch of shit you've just got to put up with and deal through and sort out. So yeah, you know, I'm fully responsible for reinforcing that dynamic somewhat. But I quite like host. Host is the one I quite enjoy. You know, it's like I'm hosting the party. You're all my guests. You know, the party's not fun because of me. The party's fun because we're all there. I like that analogy. It's a lot more entertaining and a lot more collaborative. And it spreads responsibility a bit more. but you know, you're still in my house, in my home, so please respect my rules. But you know, it's not draconian. It's more. It's a nice sofa. Please don't shit on it. You know. So I like the language of host and guests for running table. But yeah, storyteller always appeals to me because it's the old White Wolf term, and you know, LARPs and some other places use it where it's like ST, and you get the AST and all that jazz. Because LARPs are a whole thing to organize. Sorry, I'm just gonna try finish up this stitch and secure it. There we go. God, I haven't run a LARP. I haven't played in a LARP in ages, but I haven't run a LARP even longer. Running LARPs is like when you know you're in the deep end. I love doing LARPs, but I'm a big fussy pot because I'm not a big fan of boffer LARPs, which is what we call. I don't know if boffer LARPs call themselves boffer LARPs. I don't even know if the term's still in vogue, but back in the day, it was the term we used to describe all of the LARPs that involved foam swords and props, and it was all about boffing, hitting, bopping people over the head. So yeah, that was the vibe to it. It was very much the thing. And I mean, to this day, boffer LARPs are definitely the more popular format for people. But the thing that always appealed to me was we called the dinner party LARPs. Atypically, Vampire and the Camarilla was always the dominant game in the space. And I mean, don't get me wrong, issues existed. Is a polite way of expressing expressing some of the problems that we had. Oh God, were there problems? There were such problems. Sorry, my brain is like literally like, it's not in trauma mode, but my brain is like, oh yeah. Remembering all that. Damn, on my job interview I got a question if I'm finishing projects, and I was like, yeah, sure. And I think that's what they wanted to hear. No, from a job it's 100% what they want to hear. This is what I mean, is finishing projects is the... Oh, do I get this? Finishing projects is the demand of capitalism. There, I'm gonna say it. Finishing projects is the demands of capitalism. It's all about, you know, product and completion and all of that stuff. It's not about enjoying the process, because to be commercially successful, or any sort of externalized metric of success, completion is your best thing. If you can complete shit in the commercial world, you will just be significantly better off. In the academic world as well, to be honest, completion is everything. But that's an extremely external. It's an extremely external thing, you know. Great for your employer and all that jazz, but is it good for you? Do you go to bed at night and sleep tight? You know, is your sanity intact? And I think that's really really what it comes down to, you know, the tension between what's good for crash commercialism and what's good for you. And of course you exist in the real world, so you've got to balance these things. But here's the dirty secret. If you enjoy the process, it'll be a lot easier to finish things. Now, the skill that enjoying the process won't develop is the ability to slog on through. Because occasionally you are going to have to slog on through in life. It sucks. It fucking sucks. You know. But here's the spoiler that no one will tell you. You don't need to slog through recreational activities. A lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, you're not a real rock climber unless you reach the top of the mountain. Whatever bullshit they're trying to feed you this week. I was like, nah, I kind of just enjoy this. And that's fine, you know, maybe you won't become a competitive rock climber or whatever. But, fuck, it's something you do in... I worked in the private sector. Ghostbusters is such a quotable movie. It's so quotable. I love Ghostbusters. Very, very quotable. But yeah, they, the fallacy, especially as I say in video games and films and stuff, is you have to finish things, not be finished with them. And this was actually something that the first time I heard this, and this is before Enjoy the Process, the first time I heard this was from the Idle Thumbs podcast years ago. And I think it was Chris Radel, and he was playing Metro. And basically he had an experience where his character died in a specific way at a specific time. I forget the details. And he was like, that's the end. And he was done with the game. And he realized that, for him at least, that ending of his playthrough would be more satisfying than any ending the developers could have crafted. Now, there's a mystery box element, because does he actually know the ending of the thing? And maybe the ending of the thing is more fantastic than his ending. And so you can get kind of wrapped up in that. But really what he's talking about is you can stop playing a game when you're finished with it, not when the game's finished with you. You don't have to get all the completion tokens and do all the crazy shit. You know, the whole concept of 100% in a leisure activity is problematic. You can play it until it stops being fun, or preferably, and here's a revolutionary idea, play it and stop before the fun stops. You know, that's the real big brain explosion moment. You know, can you recognize when to walk away from a thing? You know, do you have that understanding of yourself and your tastes well enough that you can go, I got what I needed out of this activity. I am now done with it. Moving on. And that's, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of scary sometimes, you know, because you're like, well, maybe the end of this TV show is really good. Maybe the end of this video game is really good. Maybe I just need to get through this really hard part. But how many times have you been enjoying a thing and then you slog through, I don't know, some bad seasons of television because the show really should have ended in season 6, or you slog through a video game, or especially like if it's an early access game or whatever, and you're like, oh, it should be so much better, and then you're just like, by the time you're done with the game, you just kind of want to fling it across the room. It happens, you know. So yeah, rather than letting that happen to you, just stop when you want to stop. It's a revolutionary concept. But yeah, I remember getting that from Adult Thumbs, and it was a real breakthrough moment for me, because I have this thing where, and I know why I do it, and I won't go into why I do it, but when I read a book, and in recent years, when I say recent years, I mean very recent, I've been able to stop this habit occasionally. But when I read a book, I finish it. Doesn't matter how god-awful the book is. Because some books that I have read in the past have gotten really good, or the payoff is really satisfying, or the whatever. And so I justify it to myself. I'm like, you remember that book? You really didn't like it? You got through the opening chapters, and then you loved it. And, you know, hell, fucking Lord of the Rings falls into that category. Working through the Tom Bombadil bits, especially as a teenager. Oof. And this is before the movies came out. So, you know, you don't know all the epicness that's ahead. You've just been told by your English teacher that this is a really good book. Yeah, slogging through Tom Bombadil was, it was a thing. It was a thing. The pacing of the book was much slower. Because I used to read a lot of older books and watch a lot of older movies and stuff. And yeah, then they can sometimes be a slog to get through the start. So yeah. But now I'm like, well, you had your moment to grab my attention. You were unable to grab my attention. I'm going to move on. And occasionally I'm in a more reflective mindset, and then I will go, maybe I should try read that book again, or watch that thing again, and I go back to it. But I don't go back to everything. And it means I've actually got books, not physical books, but because I can't help myself, I always still finish physical books no matter what. But I've got some Kindle books and things that are unfinished. And then I have literally in my Kindle marked them as done, because I'm like, this book's not for me. Took a lot of energy to develop that habit. Took a lot of energy to push through and get that habit into my head, because my head did not want that habit. Once it was in there, I was grateful that it was in there. You know, it was a good change to make. It was a very good change to make. And I'm glad I made it. But yeah, it took willpower. It sounds so funny to say that it was difficult to stop reading things I didn't want to read, but it was. And yeah, so now video games. I sometimes play a video game for a few hours, and then I'm like, I'm done with this. And you know, I've got to acknowledge that I'm no longer a kid that can't afford games. Well, for the opinion that Lord of the Rings is where the movie is better than the book because it cut out superfluous stuff. It's different from the books. I still personally prefer the books, but I would say as a creative, I think the movies are excellent. I think the movies are fantastic. I still enjoy the books more, just because there's more to them. But I think the other reason is that culturally, like in terms of artistic milestones, the books were a bigger milestone. The books were really hard to write. When you look at what existed at the time, whereas the Lord of the Rings films were just an extension of what was happening cinematically at the time. They did some pretty epic things, but like they didn't move the medium forward as much as Lord of the Rings moved the book medium forward. But I mean, I fucking loved the movies. But yeah, had cartoon movies to spur me on, I guess. Yeah, that's true. So, you'll laugh. My first experience of the animated Lord of the Rings movies were we had a timeshare. My family had a timeshare in the mountains, a little cottage, and we would always go there for about a week between Christmas and New Year's. It was one of those kind of timeshares. Sometimes it would actually fall on Christmas itself, sometimes it would actually fall on New Year's itself, but it usually and typically fell in between the two. And there was fuck all to do there except walk through the mountains. There was a trampoline. Got really good at trampolining at one point in my life. But there was also the head office had this extremely small collection of board games, VHS tapes, and some books. Oh god, the book collection was dismal. I learned fast to bring a pile of my own books. And I remember getting the animated VHS movie from there and watching the animated VHS movie. And for those of you who don't know about the original animated Lord of the Rings movie, it just ends in the middle of the story, and some bits are cut into it in completely out of sequence. The animation is all over the place because they literally just ran out of money. Remember how at the start of the stream I was talking about, oh my god, it's such a beautiful thing when creative projects manage their budgets and do all this stuff and, you know, get the thing. This project is like the exact epitome of the opposite of that. It was just a chaotic creative mess. Anyway, as a kid, I'd watched this VHS tape more times than I can count, because it was one of the handful of tapes that were 100% in my wheelhouse and in the small mountain cabin that I could watch, because inevitably you would get bad weather days and there's only so many times you can play board games with your family before you want to murder them. In later years, me and my brother would lug some computer stuff there. My brother more than me, but then I would do a bunch of stuff with it. And as I say, I got pretty good at packing my own books. But there were definitely a lot of watches of that that VHS tape, scraggly as it was. And yeah, frustratingly, it just ends. But of course, the internet's not really as fantastic. Currently trapped by a cat. Oh, lovely. The internet isn't as fantastic as it was now. And, well, in some ways it was more fantastic, to be honest. But yeah, I constantly tried to track down, and I went to the video store and I tried to do this, and I was like, where is the rest? Where is the rest of this thing that I've watched endlessly? And I just want to get the rest of this animated movie, or this animated movie series, or whatever it was. And I just couldn't find it. And this tortured my poor little kid brain for many years, until eventually I found out that it just ended. And I didn't find that out until the real life Lord of the Rings films happened, because I think it came up in some interview or some discussion or some behind the scenes or whatever, and then I was like, my God, the tragedy, the absolute tragedy. Right, that's all marked out. We've run 15 minutes over, so we're gonna have to wrap. Fortunately, my face cam's overheated, so I can't give you guys a proper goodbye. But yeah, let's show you the progress for today. As I say, off stream, I got the pier stitched in last night, off stream, because thing. But then this morning we just did our little green patch there, and we did a little bit of thing. But mostly what we've done is we've marked out. See the the Nessie shadow pattern there, and then that tree line there. That's all going to be single floss stitch that we get in. So yeah, there it is there. What? No, he never finished it, Wraith. Don't tell me that. He never finished it. I'm certain he never finished it. Oh no, fuck. Don't do this to me. I'm gonna have to go on a... No, I know he didn't finish it. I'm 100% sure he didn't finish it. No, I know they didn't finish. I'm gonna go and have to dig. Because yeah, there was a whole tragedy of the animation, and it's part of like his whole tragic... If you're unfamiliar with the animator behind the animated Lord of the Rings films, really look at his entire career, watch everything he made, because he's one of the greats of animation, and he's just genius. But he is fucking awful at business and managing productions and stuff. Awful. God, okay, I'm ringing, but he tried to stop it. I did as well. I'm gonna have to go dig now. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and dive deep on Google and fuck, what have you done to me? I've got to get to work. I'm gonna go into a Google hole now, and I know I'm gonna go into a Google hole, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. I'm not ordering DVDs. I literally just ordered the director's cut of But I'm a Cheerleader, because it has unseen footage that I've never seen before. I'm trying to solve this completion thing. I really am. Trying really hard. And Punji, to answer your question about favourite board games, I have so many. From childhood, I mostly played shit board games, so it's not a good comparison. It wasn't until university that I got exposed to a bunch of really good board games. At the moment, the one I think I have the most fun with is actually a card game called Set. So anyway, right, we're going to end there. Wraith has put a worm in my brain, and I have to go chase this down. I have to go chase this down now. Oh. Well, thanks for that. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you when I see you.
Rock it like you sew it.